say is that I'm not going to be your interim director for much longer. OPDS has reached an agreement to hire a new executive director. That'll be Steve Singer. He's from New Orleans, and he was in the Defender office down there through Katrina. So he's battle tested and ready for greater challenges. So he's going to be here in December for orientation and some introductions, and then he'll officially start January 3. I've told him that you are a thoughtful, caring, patient. A few days before you start calling him about problems. I also want to introduce another new person, Autumn.Shreve, known to many of you, of course, because she spent the last 6 years at MDI. We stole her from a felony caseload there. She's the new government relations person at OPDS. So welcome, Autumn. You'll hear more from her later. Next, the ABA caseload study. We've all been expecting it. It's not out. Apparently, they've had some data issues. We haven't seen it. We do expect it soon. We're all going to see it at the same time when it finally appears. Next, COVID situations. I continue to be interested in local court compliance with COVID issues. I'd be pleased to hear from you about what your courts are doing or not doing in that regard. And also, of course, what they're doing or not doing about the backlog of cases. Next, I want to talk about accounts payable. The online form is going to start January 4, and you will have to use that form to get paid. And when you use the form, you'll have to have an email on the form so that you can get the auto-generated status reports and any questions staff may have to you about your billing. There's a second round of feedback going on about the form, and there's a memo that went out 10/22. Please do review that so that you can make sure you do get paid. And related to that, sign up for the emails. If you look on our website or at the bottom of the agenda, you can see how to do that. That way you're sure to hear what you need to know. We've had some questions about delays in payment. Our time has slipped a little because of the OGEN shutdown and some new staff training, but we're training people up. Things should improve. We're just over 30 calendar days now, and we'll be back under 30 days soon. The same OGEN shutdown created some problems with NRE approvals, but that should also get back to normal soon. Next, I've got 3 people that have a couple of things to talk about. First, I'm going to introduce you to Jen Gray O'Connor, who's going to talk about stakeholder engagement and our plan for that. Jen, good afternoon. The floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much, Ed. And I'd also like to introduce Erin.Severe, who is working on the community engagement side from OPDS and who is here to answer questions as well. Thank you so much for your time. I realize you all have a lot to cover in this meeting, and so I'm really here to listen to provider concerns and to give you sort of a high-level overview of the engagement process. So really briefly, my name is Jen Gray O'Connor, and I work with Coraggio Group. And Coraggio Group is working with OPDS in order to do some strategic planning, change management, and modernization work. And so I am working in the capacity of stakeholder engagement. That's my background and what I've been doing for over 20 years. We're looking at stakeholder engagement through a couple different tools. We'll be doing 4 different surveys that'll be available online as well as in paper copy. Be performing 15 interviews, doing 10 focus groups, and then reporting out at the end of that process back into a public meeting so we can make sure that we're vetting what it is that we're hearing and see if there's anything that we missed. And so the reason why we're doing several different surveys is really understanding that there are multiple types of stakeholders within OPDS community. And so one of the most essential pieces is really the provider piece. So as part of OPDS partners, including community-based organizations, we are interested in talking to providers both through a survey as well as through focus groups. We're also looking to provider support to help reach clients because we want to make sure that we're hearing directly from client stakeholders and also to the purpose of creating those research pathways, making sure that we have mechanisms for hearing from providers in a regular way and hearing from clients in a regular way. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there. I want to see, Erin, if there's anything that you want to add, but other than that, we're really here to listen to what your concerns are and what your questions are.
Yeah, I'm just going to add just a little bit. We are very close to rolling out the client survey. We talked about this at the last PDSC meeting. Not everyone on this call was there, but you should expect to hear from OPDS fairly shortly with a survey that we're going to need some help reaching clients. We are also trying to reach clients in incarcerative settings, and so the OPDS is going to be leading that work, and you may not see all of that, but if you have clients who are outside correctional facilities, we're going to need your help accessing them. And then the second part is I think we're also getting close to coming up with an initial draft of a provider survey. And so I think one of our hopes here is if there's I think we have some ideas about what you're interested in talking about, but we'd love to hear from you if there's things that you particularly want to get lifted up in this stakeholder engagement process.
All right, I'm going to move on to Autumn.Shreve. She's going to talk about Senate Bill 578 and some caseload issues. Autumn, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ed. I am happy to be here at OPDS, and I'm really looking forward to getting to know and meeting the different providers that I don't already know. But starting with Senate Bill 578, this is a bill that some of you may be aware of, some of you may not be aware of, but it passed the legislature in the 2021 session, and implementation begins in the beginning of this next year. So technically it starts on January 3rd of 2022. It's related specifically to protective proceedings. We don't expect that many of you are in the realm of protective proceedings. That covers guardianships and conservatorships. We've been loosely talking about this as the Britney Spears bill, although I think it predated her. So the real heart of the bill is that OPDS has been tasked with providing and paying for counsel in protective proceedings in a pilot project of Lane and Multnomah counties to begin with for the first year. It expands after that, but for right now, that's what we're mainly focused on. So we just wanted to provide you with that update. We don't think that it's going to impact your particular practice areas. We are not anticipating at this time asking anybody that currently does criminal defense to jump into the probate world, which is essentially the bar that is in charge of these kinds of proceedings right now. So, but we would like, if you are a person that happens to do those kinds of cases, or you know someone that does, we are looking for more provider perspective on this matter. So happy to have you reach out to us. I'm going to say again to reach out to us at the end, but I'll say that my email address is on the Oregon State Bar website, but it's also Autumn.Shreve at opds.state.or.us, so that you guys all are able to reach me directly with any of the issues that come up here. Moving on from that, caseload and workload. Two different things, big issues around that. Two main issues I want to hit is that, for one, there are actual capacity issues where some providers and organizations have reached the level that they've gotten cutoff notices from OPDS, from the agency. In various counties, there's been concern about not having enough providers to cover the people that have new cases that have been newly filed. This, we believe, we are aware of it occurring in at least 4 counties, and OPDS has been talking to the Chief Justice and is working on talking to the presiding judges and is in process of making sure that those things are covered. We believe we have a plan individualized to each of the counties that this impacts. So that's one issue. That is specific to actually reaching quota. The second issue is, I think, something that impacts really everyone right now, and I personally was impacted by this, which is just the backlog of cases and the high caseloads. So to that, I'm just talking about your workload. To be very clear, we're talking about the cases on your desk or the cases on your floor. And the issue with that, of course, is the backlog and the leftover cases from years prior. So the contracts do not have a good or clear way of dealing with that right now, because those cases existed before 2021 began. We have also noticed that generally across the board that case filings are down, and we want to make sure that we alleviate any concerns that people might have about 2020 or 2021 numbers being somehow used to determine your contracts going forward. And we have, OPDS wants to assure you that we don't have any plans of shrinking contracts because of the numbers from the past 2 years. We do want to talk about the other thing that we have, which is the CJC, or Criminal Justice Commission, numbers and information about what has occurred up to this point, which is really just numbers from 2020. And we can see in those numbers that there is indeed a backlog that is played out in the data. We do not have updated numbers for 2021, which of course we know it's gotten worse. So we say this all to say that we are continuing to try to get more numbers from the Criminal Justice Commission so that we can track this on our own, but you guys are great people to be tracking this for us as well. We've also been communicating with Chief Justice Walters. She's aware of these issues, and we're going to continue to be in contact with her. So all that to say, we know we've been hearing from you already. We want to continue to hear from you about how effective, especially your judges and DAs, are being in handling this backlog. And if there's any creative solutions that seems to be working in various counties, maybe we can help to share that around. So again, reach out to me, reach out to Ed. I'm going to be continuing forward, so I'm a great resource and happy to hear from you all. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Autumn. Now I want to get back to Erin.Severe, and she's going to talk about House Bill 5030 and the compliance issues there. Erin.
Hi, everyone. I'm actually going to hijack this a little bit and return back to the stakeholder engagement, because I think we were looking for a little bit of an opportunity to get some provider feedback. And I don't know if there is any provider feedback on the stakeholder engagement. But we thought it make sense to use this call to get that, if there is any. So otherwise we wouldn't been quite so quick earlier in our presentation. We are, as I said earlier, we are planning on creating a survey. We're in the final draft forms of that. But if there are particular issues that people want to lift up, now's a great time to hear that. I think, Jen, you can probably share your email and I can share my email. I'll be actually sharing it on the next slide once I get to the CAP presentation.
Great, thank you, Erin. Yeah, I realize I can't put it in the chat, but it's just Jen, Jen at coragiogroup.com.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm going to give that a second, and if there isn't anything, then we can move on. Thank you, Jen. Shall we? Okay. All right. Oh, it looks like there's a hand raised and I can't see whose it is. Does the person, go ahead.
Sorry, it's me, Eva Ripito with AppsMe. I guess, my usual question of, will we be able to have engagement around like looking at various models and how you all will be responding with provider input and stakeholder input on what the system might be being worked on to look at. Sorry, I'm paying attention to two different meetings. What the system might look like going forward, I guess.
Yeah, so the main purpose of this engagement, just to distinguish it, is to get that provider input on the strategic planning process. So it is those like high level priorities, pain points, the types of feedback that'll help inform that planning process. But again, it's part of a larger effort to be able to build those mechanisms for gathering feedback. And so the really important part here is just, like you said, making sure that the questions are going to provide information that informs that process and that are meaningful to you all, to the providers.
So yes, absolutely, on kind of the big questions facing the agency. That's exactly the kind of input that we want provider input in for this stakeholder engagement process. And there's going to be multiple loopbacks to reflect as the strategic planning process moves forward also. So it's not a one and done opportunity.
Great. Thank you.
You bet. I think there's another hand raised. Steve Gorham.
Yes, I think it would help us all if you would maybe let the chat be opened and you would put all your emails in the chat. I mean, you're talking really fast. We don't all have good connections. And if you can't put them in the chat, if you could put them someplace that we can all find them at the OPDS, in one place. Search.
Yes, we can disseminate those emails afterwards. The chat is turned off right now, so I'd be happy to make sure that gets sent along to everybody.
So if you would disseminate them maybe to the group, that'd be great. Thank you.
You got it.
Thank you, Steve. All right. Are people ready then for me to talk about the CAP division?
Go right ahead.
Right. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. So just give me a moment to do that. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
I've already introduced myself. There is my email if you have a minute to capture it. This presentation is going to focus on the compliance, audit, and performance function. So my objectives is to just review what CAP is and why the agency keeps talking about it, what this compliance, audit, and performance means, describe what CAP helps make possible for the agency, and where the work currently stands and what to expect next and when to expect it. This is just going back to the last legislative session. When the legislature passed our budget during the last session, it held back, I think as almost everyone knows, $100 million for professional services. Primary expectation of the legislature in order to release that $100 million is integrating this compliance, audit, and performance function into agency operations. That's why we're talking about it. In a nutshell, as I understand it, the CAP is largely about increased transparency over where public money is going, how it is being used, and what the return on investment, both in terms of quality and outcomes, the public is getting for its money. So CAP is an obligation, but it's also a real significant opportunity for the agency. We talked about this at the last PDSC meeting, and what I said there, and I'm going to reiterate here, is that the agency has not been well equipped to be a driver or partner for public defense reforms. Part of that is because the agency has lacked the necessary infrastructure, data systems, and staff to effectively track how public money was being used and what the public was receiving in return for its investment, in quality or client outcomes. So CAP is really a tool that can help us change that. So some of its benefits is an increased ability to track and forecast expenditures associated with environmental changes, such as what we've just been talking about here, case logs and backlogs, as well as more proactive system modifications. For example, things like agencies report support for overhead, training, or other substantive modifications to how we contract. It will also help the agency understand how it is doing as a system partner, how its own policies, procedures, and practices facilitate or detract from efficient and effective delivery of public defense services. And I think examples there that everyone on this call is going to be familiar with are things like how we do NREs, how we do attorney qualifications, and our accounts payable work. Important takeaway here is that CAP isn't necessarily going to result in like immediate change, but this is an investment in the future of public defense. It's also essential. It's an important way and an essential way for us to build trust with the legislature. And when we build that trust, make the case in terms of the legislature can understand and have confidence in for what needs to change. So another point here is that the legislative expectations for CAP are consistent with national trends for delivery of public defense services. The same kind of push is happening in a lot of other states. Doing CAP well will present new challenges for this agency, but the CAP is also a significant opportunity for the agency to not only improve itself, but become a more effective partner. So the agency hired the Coraggio Group to assist with the organizational design, support, and development of the CAP division and integration of that function into agency operations. And the reason we did that is that this is a reorganization of the agency on the administrative business side. This is not a small undertaking for the agency. And the intent in hiring the Coraggio Group is to help manage this restructure in a thoughtful and intentional way. So we are currently in the process of developing and defining the organizational design for the CAP division. That involves, just at a very high level, getting clarity on what the work is, how it fits into the agency structure, and how the work will get done. Currently, some of the work that will eventually belong in CAP is distributed throughout the agency. There's some pieces of CAP's work that still needs to be developed. The point here is that we're identifying the functions and the work needed in order to implement this, and then creating a structure that supports those functions. The next step is developing a comprehensive CAP plan for CAP. And this is where we bring in the metrics for tracking and evaluating attorney, entity, and agency performance, which involves identifying the questions that we need to answer, what data do we need to meaningfully answer those questions, and how and where we'll obtain that data. Some important points for this group on that are, we'll be looking for provider input throughout this process. We want to be very mindful of providers' capacity and not ask providers to provide data that we can't use or that we don't know how to use yet. So that's a real sensitivity that we're bringing to this. And it's also just important to note that what this initial compliance, audit, and performance division looks like is likely to look different than what we hope to accomplish in the long term, because our technological capacity is currently pretty limited. This is a new division in the agency and it's not yet fully staffed. And we anticipate and are planning for an iterative, staggered rollout that where we can learn as we go and not create more than what we can reasonably support. So I think that's just a very sort of broad view of what CAP is and sort of where we are in building that out internally. We will be providing updates on CAP at every PDSC meeting and probably during these provider calls. We anticipate being able to present on the final organizational design in December, and we anticipate having a comprehensive plan by June of 2022.
Thank you, Erin, for that. And that takes care of the official parts of the agenda. We have a few minutes. We can accept some questions. So I'll open the floor to questions. Seeing none so far. All right. If that's where we are, then I'm going to thank everybody for their attention and look forward to seeing you at the next provider call. Take care, everybody.